G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. So I have been pumping out the predictions videos on the channel for the past month or so now with the likes of bold calls, who I think will be breakout players, even asking a bunch of AFL creators for their predictions. But finally, it is time now to release the big bopper. I'm going to be doing my official 2023 AFL season predictions, with the usual stuff like going over the ladder predictions and going over who I think will win the Brownlow Medal, the Coleman and the Rising Star Award. If you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Bloody keen. Footy season is only around 2 weeks or 3 weeks away now, and I'm just pumped to get into the season. So, of course, we'll kick it off with my ladder predictions. Okay, ladder predictions time. Want to make a few bold calls, of course, because the ladder does move around quite a bit. We usually see maybe a team from the bottom 4 push up, maybe a team from the top 4 push down. So, it's another great way of seeing my dislike button cop a nice little workout. With that aside, we'll actually get into it now. 18th place, who I think will win the spoon. It's a hard one. I think it's a bit of a toss-up. We see a lot of teams rising up this year from the bottom 4, but someone has to take home the wooden spoon. And I believe for 2023, it will be the GWS Giants. I think overall, their list is still inexperienced in multiple areas. Don't get me wrong, they still have superstar players in that team like Whitfield, 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻, Josh Kelly, Toby Green, even Sam Taylor's rising up, but I just don't know in this season, and adopting a new coach, of course, of Adam Kingsley, how long will that take for them to get their style of the Orange Tsunami back? Because I'm guessing that's how they're wanting to play that footy, with just some fast-paced, right down the guts sort of football. That's where they play their best, but just there's quite a bit of an imbalance. I think multiple areas around the ground, there's just a lot of inexperience, and I don't know if they're going to generate enough wins. And speaking of their star players, are they going to be good enough? Are they going to be that big of an influence to pick up a lot of wins this year? So, yeah, I'm not too sure on the Giants this year. I just think they're going to slump a bit, and I've got them for the wooden spoon. Again, it's a toss-up. You know, you look at multiple teams, can you see them win the spoon? I think it's just going to be the Giants this year, and they were just a really poorly unaccountable team last year. I don't know if they're good enough to prepare out of the bottom 4, and I've got them taking home the wooden spoon for 2023. 17th place, and I do have the Hawthorn Footy Club. Now, don't get me wrong, I know the Hawks well of last year and the year before. They always are a team that just get some scalps. They always shock a few opponents left, right and centre, but it's hard to pick this bottom 4, bottom 3, and just because you look at it theoretically, they've lost over 1,000 games of experience. Mitchell at the door, big boy McAvoy, O'Meara, Jack Gunston. There's just a lot of room now for inexperienced and young players to try and fill those voids. And for this year alone, I think it will be a slow year. They really do probably want to try and contend for Harley Reid. So I'm not going to say they're going to be tanking, but just in terms of they need more and more young players to really build the chemistry. With the young coach, of course, of Sam Mitchell, they're just pretty much at the start of a full rebuild now. For 2023, I don't think they'll go probably past the bottom 4. Again, they might shock a few opponents, get a few sneaky wins, but just looking at it theoretically, a lot of experienced players at that club, a lot of young players like 𝐓𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻, Will Day really need to step up, and even CJ too. New captain, of course, of 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻. They're just a young team, but I think they're going to, you know, try and build a few foundations this year, but for me, they're going to be one of the lowest rated teams in 2023. I know the Hawkers at 17th. 16th place, I do have the North Melbourne Kangaroos. A few people are contending North Melbourne to win the three-peat of the wooden spooners in 2023, and to be honest, I can't go wrong with that. I think they are a genuine chance to take home the spoon, but are they going to be last place this year? I highly doubt it. I think Alistair Clarkson is just one of the greatest coaches of our generation, and if you've seen the clips of him at the board and also, you know, in the preseason training, I've just explained to the group so well, so thorough, like we're here to win premierships. You just look at that and you think, you know, this guy knows what he's doing. He's here to coach his team to eventual premiership. So I think this year will just be that probably slow year. And then maybe next year they push up into mid-table, even contend for finals, because they do have a lot of promising players. You know, Ben McKay back there, Griffin Logan, Tucker, the additions. A lot of young players that have a bit of potential. You know, Bailey Scott and Curtis Taylor, Paul Curtis, Jai Simpson and 𝐿𝑑𝑢 could go to the next level this year. Tom Powell in there too. They've got some good names in there, and I think if they can marry together with some good coaching of Alistair Clarkson, they might chalk up a few more wins this year, start develop a better game style. Could he get the best out of the likes of Aaron Hall and Jack Seaborn to more better ball-using players like 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻 back at the Hawthorn days? So there's just such good potential with the coaching. In terms of the list, they're still inexperienced. There's still not really too many great players. They just need time, and I think this year they will improve, and I've got the Kangaroos at 16th. 15th place, I do have the Saints. I did have them at the exact same spot in my early predictions, and to be honest, I'm not really going to be moving them. I just don't know about their list. The thing is though, don't get me wrong with the Saints, I think the coaching staff off the field is looking really good. Of course, Ross the Boss, then Corey Enright and Goddard as the head of development, and also Robert Harvey and Lenny Hayes. They've just got some really good personnel at the club now, so I think off the field they are looking good. But their list is just all over the shop. I don't know if they're actually good enough to push up the finals. Of course, Jack Steele and Jack Sinclair and Max King and Rowan Marshall, some star plays there, but just the other players around the team that fail to really reach enough output. You know, the likes of Higgins and Jack Billings, of course, out with injury. That's another thing with the Saints. They do have a few injuries, so I think they'll start off the year a bit poor. Their list is just totally out of shape at the moment. I know they drafted really well last year and they can build off that, but in terms of this year, I think it's just going to be a slow year for the Saints. You know, Ross Lyon as well, what he did at Freo, he liked to play the youth, so maybe he does that this year. In terms of this year, they might be a bit slow, and then next year, with the draft talent, they push up a bit. But yeah, they're just a mystery, the Saints. Again, the list is out of shape. Not only that, they were just poor with transition and really bad with ball skills and standards as well, and work ethic. They really need to improve on that this year. But for me, there's always a team in the top 10 that usually push down to bottom 4. I think it will be the Saints this year in 2023, and I have them at 15th. 14th place now, moving up into the bit of the mid-table area, I do have the Essendon Football Club, a team I reckon that will probably stagnate their position compared to last year, this season 2023. I just don't know. Again, on this year, Brad Scott, good addition of a coach, can adopt a bit more of a high work ethic, blue-collared system, more tougher style of play, raising the standards. That's what the Bombers truly need, because they've got good talent on there and they need a bit more motivation and, you know, a bit more consistency. But in terms of this year, I think Brad Scott will probably want to take it slow. I just don't know if the list itself is good enough to produce enough consistency and enough wins to push up into finals. Don't get me wrong, the Bombers have such a talented list in few areas, really good rising stars. You know, of course, the likes of 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼, Nick Cox coming back from injury, Sam Durham and Ben Hobbs, and even 𝗍𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 back there. And the main men of Ridley and Merritt and can Jake Stringer get into full form, because they do have players that can really turn games and are game changers too. So yeah, a bit of a mystery of the Bombers for me, though. I think Brad Scott wanted to take things slow this year. It'd probably take a while to develop a more defensive, accountable system and a higher standards of the group. So I think it'll take maybe a year or two for that to come into fruition. But for this year, I think they'll stagnate sort of the Bombers and finish mid-table at 14th. In 13th place now, I've got a bit of a riser from the bottom 4 from last year. I do have the West Coast Eagles. I'm pretty bullish on the Eagles this year. I think they are genuinely a good enough team to... Look, maybe finals is a bridge too far, but definitely push up into mid-table. I think they're more than capable of doing. Just a lot of injuries last year. I know I keep on repeating it. I know that Eagles fans keep on repeating it, but it's just quite simply true. Elliot Yeo, 𝘠𝐿𝐼 𝐿𝐿𝐼, Oscar Allen, and Tom Cole, McGovern even. A lot of those players were out injured. Yes, a bunch of those players that did stay did come back during the season and play, but it's just not the same as having a full pre-season with a full rehab under their belts. I think they're just now refreshed. They're a bit more prime now, a bit more young talent coming through. Jai Culley, I think, can explode this year to sort of like a 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 𝐷𝐬𝐵𝐵ry type of breakout year. Oscar Allen, he could potentially kick 40, 50 goals. He really needs to get going this season. And even their experienced players like Jack Darling and Jeremy McGovern, I think they are still good enough players to produce maybe 2 or 3 more years of really good output for that Eagles side. So I believe with now a fully healthy Eagles squad in 2023, coached extremely well, of course, by Adam Simpson. They are a very successful club too, the Eagles. They aren't down the bottom 4 for a very long time whilst they are down there. I reckon they'll push up into mid-table, have a nice season, produce a bit more consistent results, but at the other side of the coin, they still do need some really good young talent. They are still in a rebuilding mode. So I reckon they'll meet in the middle between bottom 4 and finals. I have them at 13th. You always got to have underachieving sides in line of predictions, and at 12th place, I do have Port Adelaide, and that probably does mean that that will be the end for Keane Hinkley in 2023. Oh, you know, they are such a mystery side this year, Port Adelaide. You just look at 2 sides of the coin. You look at the upside on their list. You know, Zach Butters and Connor Rozee and Horn Francis, exciting players. Down forward, 2 of the likes of Orazio Fantasia and Junior Rioli and Mitch Georgiadis and Todd Marshall. There's just a lot of exciting names in there, and they're players that can change games, and they have potential, and they can rise up and win games, and they could probably chalk a few more wins compared from last year. But then on the other side of it, their defense is still lacking. You know, can Jonas and 𝘼𝐼𝐸 get back to their best? You know, they really struggle in the defensive terms of last year. And of course, 𝐬𝐿𝐼𝐸, he's the big question mark. There's a lot of pressure on him too. It's just, for me, their backline is so weak, and I believe that will occur in 2023. But then again, they look like a finals quality team if things are clicking, but I reckon they will underachieve this year, and I've Port at 12th. In 11th place, I do have another riser in 2023. I've got the Adelaide Crows. I reckon they will make some good foundations, make some good steps from their rebuild the past few seasons and push up into mid-table, because they are a good enough team now to start to push to finals. Darren Burgess, I've said it many times before, as their fitness coach, as their head of fitness or whatever it is, he's come in from last year and just made some really good progress. We saw the Crows last year. Yes, they lost like nearly 10 games in a row, but they were just a very tough, competitive and highly contested side, and you really had to grind out Adelaide to beat them. And with the likes, of course, of Darcy Fogarty and Josh Rachele and Sam Berry, and the addition of Isaac Rankin, they've got some exciting young players in that team now who have the potential to take that next step in 2023 and not have to rely on the likes of like Rory Laird and Taylor Walker. It's now about the young players, fueled by their young captain of Jordan Dawson, to really just lift up this team and start to show more wins this season in 2023. So I like the upside in this Crows side. They're just some really talented players and built with a good, strong foundation of more fitter players and a very competitive side. I reckon the Crows will push up the ladder and finish in 11th. Moving on now into 10th place, and I do have the Western Bulldogs. If you did catch my bold calls video a few weeks back, I did state that I believe Luke Beveridge will be sacked at the end of the season, and quite simply put, I just have to say, if the Bulldogs don't make finals, that could potentially see Beveridge out the door, because if you look at the list of Bulldogs, they're a team that should be making finals. In multiple areas, their list is looking primed, it's looking elite. The midfield, Bontempelli, Jack Macrae. I know Dunkley is out of the side, but you can easily patch that in with a more fitter and more attended Bailey Smith ready to play, Toby McLean, or even like a Riley West too. So I think that void isn't that detrimental. Recruitment in the offseason was really good too, bringing in the likes of Liam Jones, a pretty underrated defender, so I think he can make an impact. Rory Lobb as well, a top goal scorer from Freo from last year, could come in, maybe kick 30 goals and show some great assistance to the likes of Aaron Norton and of course Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. Some promising plays there. On paper, they're a team that should be making finals. Let's not forget too, very good contested team. But then on the other side of it, I just don't know about their defense. They were the worst ranked team last year in defending transition, which is just not a good sign if you really want to do push into finals. They did win the contested count multiple games last year. If you go back and look at the stats, they did win a lot of the contested game. Again, that usually means they should be winning the game, but they just can't. And I just don't know about Beveridge. Can he make the most of their lists? We saw from games last year, he just failed to play the players in the right position. Should have brought in other players, and he just played players when they shouldn't have been playing. I just don't know if Beveridge can make the most of this list this year, and for me, it's his last chance. Just a bit of a mystery team, the Bulldogs. On paper, they do look good to make finals, but I just don't know about Beveridge. I don't know about their defense. I don't know if they can produce enough consistency. So for me, I have the Bulldogs missing out on finals. I've got them at 10th. And now for the dreaded 9th place. I'm sorry, I've got to have a team here. It's got to be someone. I reckon it will be Fremantle. It's harsh. It really is harsh. They're one of my favourite second teams, I guess you could say. I love the look of their young core. I love their engine room. Absolute superstars in that team. But there's just so many question marks on if they're good enough this year. But don't get me wrong, the next few years, they are projected to be a top team in the AFL. Solely this year, I don't know if they're good enough. And for me, it's just their forward line. Good midfield, really good defense that can really build this year. It's just the forward line that's a mystery. They were a team last year, Freo, that just really struggled to put on points. They were one of the lowest points for out of the whole top 12, yet they still almost made top 4. But it's going to be hard to replicate this year, and I think as well, a lot more teams will go to homework on breaking down their zone defending. We saw Sydney do it last year. We saw Melbourne do it last year. And that's why I don't have them making finals this year. But don't get me wrong, there's still going to be a team that's going to show really good form and take major scalps this year. But then the forward line, Rory Lobb out of the team. 𝐼𝐸𝐻, I think he's 2 or 3 years away from becoming a top forward. It falls onto the shoulders of the likes of Josh Corbett and Josh Tracy. Maybe 𝑘𝐻 could be a temporary fix down there too. I just don't know about Freo this year. But don't get me wrong, they're going to be a team that's going to be awesome in the coming years. But for me, Freo, they're going to fall just short and finish in 9th. Now for the top 8, as stated before, there's just going to be a lot of competitive teams this year. It's a hard one to shuffle, a hard one to squeeze in enough teams, but there's only 8 at the end of the day. So for 8th place, I do have the Sydney Swans. I don't really buy into the fact too much that they're just going to completely collapse after a huge grand final defeat last year. But if you look at Sydney, right, halfway through last year, they were a team that we questioned, were they even going to make finals after the loss against Essendon? They were just really inconsistent. They struggled a bit with consistent enough contested game abilities. They sometimes had those surges where they just got smashed. You know, they conceded maybe 3 or 4 goals or 6 or 7 goals in a matter of minutes, and they had slow starts too. But then they just went on a rampage of just momentum-fueled, high-pressure football, ticking over win after win. And don't get me wrong, they're a highly talented list, the Swans. It's just going to be really hard to replicate that. Now with a team that has a few more injuries, last year had such a clean bill of health, they're going to have to replicate that high consistency of just high pressure and of course high contested game. Still a very young side to it as well, the Swans. It's going to be a big mental challenge this season, so that's why I'm quite skeptical on them this year. It's the likes of Callum Mills and Dane Rampy and Luke Park to really rally around the squad and lift them up. But for me, I reckon they're just going to struggle a little bit this year, manage to sneak into finals and maybe even get a finals win in 2023. But yeah, I've got them sitting at 8th. In 7th place, I do have a big call here. The Gold Coast Suns will make finals in 2023 and for the first time in their existence. Bold calls video a few weeks back, I did state I reckon either Gold Coast, Adelaide or Essendon will make finals, so I'm a true man on my word there. Suns will make finals this year. I just think they're ready. They are ready. Last year, they were very close to making finals. They had a lot of close losses, but the other thing was they had a lot of injuries. Charlie Ballard was out. Connor Buderick and 𝘬𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐻 out too. Ben King was out for the whole year. They had to rely on a delisted player of 𝘬𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐵𝐵 and a player that had no opportunity or was almost going to get delisted by the name of 𝘬𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐻, and they just went back and had an awesome year. 𝐷𝐿𝐻 Miller in there, Norrie Anderson and 𝘬𝐼𝐻 I think can go to the next level this year. Bailey Humphrey could get a bit of time in there too. Yes, Isaac Rankin is a huge loss, but you've got the likes of 𝘬𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐵𝐿 𝘬𝐻𝐿𝐻 or Malcolm Rosas or Joel Jeffrey, which I think can fill the void. 𝘬𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐻 and Ben King, I did state, could go back and maybe kick 50 goals each. They could have a huge year. I think as well that Charlie Ballard and Sam Collins is just one of the most underrated key defender duo in the competition. They are very good on their day. I just love the look of the Suns this year. I think they're going to start ticking over the wins now. They've got the talent. I think they've got now a bit more of experience of, hey, we're very close to making finals. Let's build off that. From what I've heard as well, they've had a very strong off-season or pre-season too. The Suns are going to be making finals this year. I have them at 7th. Moving on up now to the top 6, and I do have in 6th place the Collingwood Footy Club. They are one of the biggest teams this year, or biggest noted teams to drop out of the top 8 and finish out of finals, which I sort of get in a way. They were a team that was ranked quite poorly in clearances from last year. You also look at their close wins from last year. A lot of people state, you know, they'll be on the other side of that. They can't seem to replicate the close wins. A lot more teams will probably go to homework on the Pies transition, so they might be a bit more of a predictable team. But for me, you can't measure spirit, you can't measure, you know, synergy of the group, you can't measure motivation and all that whatnot. And I think for me, the Pies have that team spirit and they have that, you know, momentum. They're just a team that are really well coached from the likes of Craig McRae. They're just such a well-balanced team as well. They might not have all Australian-looking plays, but they're just throughout everywhere you look. You know, they're role players too, of the likes of Quaynor could go to the next level, Beau McCrew, you name it. They've just got really well-balanced players. They get enough output from their role players. So I think they're a good enough team to make finals. They just really need to show more dominant wins, get the percentage up, and I reckon they'll build off last year with just really high spirits and well-coached man of Craig McRae, and they will make finals in 2023. And to be honest, they're a really sneaky chance for pushing up maybe into the top 2 or top 3 and win the flag. But for me, I'm meet in the middle. I reckon they're good enough to make finals, and I've got them at 6. In 5th place now, I do have the Richmond Tigers. Now, again, another team that's probably going to push up into the top 4. But for me, I've got them sitting just outside the top 4 because it's, again, really competitive for that top 4 race. You look, of course, of their midfield, Taranto and Hopper. The additions are huge. Heavily improves the contested game. And it does really assist Dion Prestia, who was quite good in clearances. And he is always a bit injury prone. They were quite poor in the contested game and clearances from last year. So that is a huge need addressed, so they can really bank off and improve of that. You look at their forward line, Tom Lynch and Rewell. Lynch for me, he is one of the most influential players in the competition. If he can have a full season, I reckon he'll win the Coleman, and he could potentially, he's a difference really. If he has a fully fit season, I think the Tigers can make top 4. They're one of those teams, the Tigers, that do have an aging list, but they have a lot of players in their prime or starting to see the end of their prime. So it's now or never against Richmond, but they still have that good blend of youth of the likes of 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐴 and 𝐓𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐴. I think they'll really improve their clearance game. They were such a high scoring side from last year as well, the Tigers, so I think they'll continue on that, and they will be a really good team to contend for the top 4, and all of them just sitting outside at 5th place. Moving on now into the top 4. This is where things, of course, do get interesting. And in 4th place, I do have the Carlton Blues. I just think they're ready to take that next huge step and play some top-end football. And I reckon they'll not only make finals, but make the top 4 in 2023. For me, last year, the Blues, yes, it was a disaster to see their season end like that. But if you look at it in more of a glass half full sort of way, they just dipped their toes in the water and just testing to see what life was like of some top-end football. Last year, they took major scalps. They were a heavily contested team. The likes of their spine were working wonders too. Midfield looking strong. I think they can just now work off that heading into 2023. If they get more output from their role players, because the gap between their best players and the worst players is a bit of a substantial gap, so they really need to close in that. They can push up and make finals and the top 4 in 2023. They just simply look ready in my eyes if they have a fully fit team, because they just had so many injuries last year. They've gained a bit of experience now of playing some top-end football throughout the home away seasons. They're in their prime now of the multiple areas across the ground, the Blues. If they, of course, said again, get a bit more output from their role players, things can get clicking, they can get a bit of momentum going this year, they'll make the top 4, I reckon, the Blues. I have them at 4th. In 3rd place now, I do have the Brisbane Lions. They have, on paper, probably the best list in the competition, and really, they should be making a grand final. Everywhere you look, there's just superstars in there. The addition of Josh Dunkley and Jack Gunston for actual focal point in attack, they're a very high scoring and exciting team. Midfield is looking good, and just their depth is looking extraordinary as well. They're just gaining a lot of experience from the younger players. Let's not forget of 𝐼𝙗𝐴𝐿𝐴 too. I think he should be a lock for the Rising Star. Probably gave away my Rising Star prediction. Pretend you didn't hear that. But yeah, just the midfield looking extremely good. Forward line, Zach Bailey could have a huge year. And Cam Rayner moving to halfback. They've just got so many good names in there and really good depth. The backline, though, is a bit of a struggle. Harris Andrews really needs to lift his game this year and show his All-Australian form from a few years back. And it's a big task for Jack Payne or Fullerton or Darcy Gardner to really, or even Jared Joyce as well, to really fill the void of that second key defender with Marcus Adams out for the season and really boss it down there. But yeah, it's just their defense is a bit of a concern. But apart from that, everywhere you look, they are just looking primed for a big tilt, potentially, of making a grand final in 2023. And I have the Lions at 3rd. 2nd place now, I do have the premiers from last year, the Geelong Cats. Don't think they'll be going anywhere. Simply put, do I need to talk quite a bit for the Cats? They are just looking really good and a genuine chance to go back-to-back this year. But they're going to be the team to beat this year, the Cats, quite simply put. I mean, they are the premiers, of course, but just such a well-balanced side. You can't really eliminate a player from their team because they just have such good depth, such good role players that play their part. Very hard team to break down. They look awesome all around the ground. Transition forward, really good defensively, good enough contested game. They're just, yeah, simply a team to beat. Superstar players, recruited so well in the draft and in the off-season as well. Ollie Henry could really go bang and maybe kick 30-40 goals this year. Tanner Bruin in the midfield. Jack Bowes as well, playing maybe a bit of a Mitch Duncan role and really accumulating the footy he could go off this year. Yeah, they're just looking brilliant, the Cats. Don't think they'll be going anywhere. I've got them in 2nd. And now for my minor premiers who I think will take home 1st place in 2023, the Melbourne Demons. I reckon they'll do probably not a repeat of 2021, go on an absolute rampage, but they will just be a strong footy club this year because their list is in their prime. I can't see them outside, 5th or 4th. I think they are a lock for top 4 this year. Clayton Oliver, Petrarca, Max Gawn, Brayshaw as well. They're just so many plays in their prime. Midfielders looking elite. The backline too is looking very strong too. Stephen May in his prime, and Harry Petty was really awesome last year. The main thing as well, why a lot of people probably have the Demons slipping out maybe of the top 4, is just their forward line. They were just pretty poor last year. They lost a lot of games where they failed to put on scoreboard pressure. For me, it was as soon as Tom McDonald went down, they really did struggle with that. They failed with structure. They failed to put on points when they really did need it. The likes of Bradley Fritsch and 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐴 Pickett were awesome last year, but they failed to produce enough consistency throughout the whole span of the 4 quarters. And I think if Tom McDonald can get things right, and Ben Brown, even Josh Schache, the recruitment as well, if they can get their forward line humming, the Demons, I reckon they're going to be a strong year this year, and I believe they'll take home the premiership in 2023. So as you can see on your screens right now, we do have our award winners, just quite simply who I think will win the Brownlow, the Coleman, and the Rising Star Award. We'll kick it off with the Brownlow Medal, and as I always do say, it's just a random stab at a top tier midfielder really. You can think about it a little bit more, but I reckon this year it will be 𝐼𝐻𝐿 𝐻𝐿 from the Brisbane Lions. 𝐻𝐿 is just such a special player. If you look at him carefully, every game, week in, week out, he does get tagged. Yes, that doesn't sound good in terms of can he win the Brownlow, but I'm just saying, if he never got tagged, or if he had a lot of games last year where he didn't get tagged, he would have won the Brownlow by some convincing margin of votes, I do believe. He was very close last year. He's just a superstar player. Just a high work rate and his ability to nudge into the contest, win the ball, get it out, spread from the contest as well. He's just so good at doing it. He's just simply one of the best players in the competition this year, and I reckon he will keep up his form. Entering now the end of his sort of prime, pushing to that 29, 30-year-old sort of range, but I reckon he's just got one more big season left in him, and I reckon he'll take home Charlie this year in 2023. Move on now to who I think will take home the Coleman Medal in 2023. I did tip this guy last year, and I'm going to be tipping him again this year. Jeremy Cameron from the Geelong Cats. This guy is in his prime. Last year, he was just sensational. His ability to push up the ground and make an impact, have a multiple 25 plus disposal, 3 goals sort of game. Just his ability around the ground is so awesome. His marking is so good. Really good shooting for goal. I reckon he'll just kick a lot more bags this year. Just huge influence for the Cats and the competition. And again, it's just a random stab at a top forward. But yeah, for me, Cameron's just in his prime. I reckon he'll just continue that top 5 AFL play in the competition ability, and he'll go back, kick 60 plus goals, and take home the Coleman. And now for my Rising Star winner, I did sort of reveal it with my latter predictions for the Brisbane Lions. I think it will be 𝐻𝐿 𝐻𝐿. For me, look, who else is going to win it really? Last year was a bit more of a debate with, like, of course, Daicos versus Horne-Francis, but for me, projections-wise, 𝐻𝐿 is the clear winner by some convincing margin, really. I think he could potentially play every game for the Lions this year. He'll make such a huge impact in his first season, I do believe. He's just high work rate and ability to spread from the contest and just demand for the football. That's always what you want to see from a top-rated midfielder, demanding the footy, repetitive touches. But for me, just simply put, I reckon 𝐻𝐿 will take home the Rising Star in 2023 by some convincing margin. So everyone, there were my season predictions for the 2023 AFL season. Bloody keen for this year. Of course, a very long video, but you know, it is quite detailed with multiple predictions left, right, and center. So I'd love to hear your fellas' thoughts down in the comments below, especially with the latter predictions, because it can cause a lot of debates. But yeah, I'd love to hear your fellas' thoughts down below, so get commenting. Once again, everyone, thank you very much for tuning into today's video. Again, I have to say it, bloody keen for this season 2023. I'm wanting to do more live watch-alongs, bloody keen for that this year. And of course, getting back to footy tips too. Really excited to get back into the swing of things for this season. And it's just such a good time of the year. I think there's just a lot more optimism with a number of teams this year in 2023. It's going to be an awesome year of footy, and especially an awesome year on the channel. So everyone, again, thank you very much for tuning in. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you wanted to enjoy. And until next time, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.